So the first item on our agenda tonight is the approval of minutes from our September 2018 meeting. Do we have any discussion regarding the minutes that have been presented? No discussion. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, moving along, we have the first item is under landscaping plans. Phase 3 of the Bridgemore subdivision located off of Watersley Lane. So,
Is there anybody here?
This is a small landscaping plan for a new phase of Bridgemore subdivision. It's a 21 or a 29 lot phase of the subdivision. The landscaping plan includes street trees and streetscaping, along with some additional landscaping along the water features. They're combination water features and drainage detention type structures. There are requirements now both for the streetscaping, landscaping, and also for the landscaping around detention basins or retention basins. Those are both provided for in the landscaping ordinance. The plan has been updated since I sent out these recommendations. And we can recommend approval of the plan subject to, they have updated it, and I have a copy if you all want to just look at it. But they originally didn't have enough trees around the detention basins and that sort of thing, and we had some additional comments about sort of deconflicting the street trees with the utilities. They've added some notes on the plans regarding those elements. We also checked the subdivision plat to ensure that it didn't appear that there were going to be conflicts with the street trees and the utilities. They've also gone back and added landscaping in the open space area and around the two water features, stormwater type features there. They are still a little short in terms of flowering tree requirements around the retention basins. The ordinance calls for 40% of the required trees to be in flowering type trees, and they're short on that, so that's a revision that they need to make. So any approval should be subject to that revision. And also we'd like them to add a note on a number of the notes there, in particular note number 11, that any substitutions also have to be approved by the town of Farragut and not just the owner and the landscape architect in terms of species substitution on the landscaping. But apart from that, they've addressed all our issues, and so subject to those two items, staff can recommend approval of it.
how many were they short?
I think they were only showing one flowering tree on the smaller of the basins, and I think they need 3 or 4, and I think they were maybe one short on the larger basin. But the requirement on that type of basin, typically it's one tree per 20 linear feet around the top of the basin. But since this is an actual water feature, and it's going to, it's going to be a lake. It's going to be a lake type feature there. It's going to have water in it all the time. That type, it just requires 1 per 40, but it still requires the minimum of 40%. And I think on the larger basin, I think the requirement was about 11 trees total, and on the smaller basin, it would be about 10 trees total that they need. And I think on one of I know on the smaller one they only had 1 flowering tree, and on the larger I think they had 3. So I think they were shy, 3 and 1.
Are they aware of that at this point?
We only got the revised plan yesterday, so I haven't made them aware of that yet. But that's something we'll pass on to them based on the.
Is anybody here representing?
Yes.
Go up to the.
What about the elm trees what's the deal on?
That was just a recommendation we had, but they chose not to,
They
not to
do
follow
that?
that. I mean, the trees that Mark was totally comfortable with the trees that they were proposing. It's just, that was just a suggestion we had, and
Don't those get fairly large? I mean, this elm?
I'll let the landscape professional explain
So
to you.
the alley elms that are primarily in phase one, the biggest issue that we've had with them over the last years, if they've grown to maturity, is their canopy size. And a lot of the box trucks and these large moving vans and equipment are coming in, and they're taking out huge sections of them. So we decided to propose to you guys a more column-based growing tree
Okay.
that is more taproot based and not surface root based. So we're not messing. I know we've got about a 6-foot buffer in the green space there between the curb and the sidewalk. That way we can focus on depth of tree growth, and we don't have to worry about girdling roots and things
So it's
of
not
that
so
nature.
much the height as like the,
Right, as
the
much as the
canopy,
canopy. The
wide.
height will be,
it's
what
the
it
width,
is.
like, okay,
Right.
which is causing problems with gotcha.
Absolutely. And we've had some complaints from some of the waste management companies. Some of their trucks, they're getting caught in it and breaking arms.
So what are you planning on?
Crimson Spire, oaks, and
How large do they get, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
But it's still straight up instead
Yes,
of a canopy
absolutely.
wise?
The canopy width on those is no more than 5.5
Oh,
feet.
okay,
so
which would make it a lot
they'll
easier.
be and up.
Gotcha. How many? 15 of them?
There's one per lot, and then an additional for some of the open space. Evenly planned, I want to say a total of 34 is what we originally spec'd. I know the landscape architect may have changed that based on the drawings and the utility requirements that were pushed out last week.
Crimson oaks.
What about the comment on the flowering trees, about
yeah.
adding more of those?
We'll absolutely comply with that, and I'll get a revised plan by the end of the
What
week
kind of
back to you
flowering
guys
trees?
on that. I think, as you said, you still got to hit the minimum 40%. You may have hit the 40 linear feet, but not the minimum 40% on that aspect of it.
And it's not additional trees, it can be substitutions for the numbers you already have in there.
Yes,
It's
sir.
just that 40% of them have to
It
be
just
flowering.
has to be flowering.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How many did he say he'd have to have? One?
3 or 4.
Just 3 or 4? Oh, that should be
A
easy.
lot.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
No brainer.
So really, the only thing was that, plus the substitution being approved by the town
Yes, sir.
would have to be written
So,
in.
oh, did you see this, Randy? Okay. I think they don't care. Let's
No,
put it
I
in.
got it.
No.
I got it.
You can see well. I can't see without my glasses. So the elms are taken care of, the flowers are taken care of. What'd you say, subject to? What else?
That substitutions would be approved by the town.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on note number 11 on their plat, it speaks to the substitution of species when necessary, and to be approved by the owner and the landscape architect. But we also need town sign off there to make sure things like the flowering minimums are met and that sort of thing if they do have to substitute a species.
Okay,
Okay.
right here.
All right, any other comments, questions, discussion about the
Nope.
landscape plan?
Good.
Okay, do we have a motion? All right, well, I'll make the
Oh,
motion
that's-
to approve, subject to updating for the flowering trees percentage, and also amending section, or note 11, substitutions must also be approved by the town.
Perfect.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you guys
Thank
very
you.
much.
Dunkin' Donuts.
All right, so moving down to the next item on the agenda, which is the ground sounding mine application, ground-mounted sign applications. I can't speak it tonight. Dunkin' Donuts, the menu board at 712 Station West Drive. So it looks like they're moving across the street.
Ah, yes.
Yep, they are.
Easier.
We've got quite a few ground sign applications tonight, so we'll just try to move through them. The first one here is a Dunkin' Donuts, a menu board for the new facility going in there on Station West Shopping Center, where they've redeveloped that front building, or they're in the process of redeveloping that front building. The menu board meets our requirements of 30 square feet and 6 feet high. That's slightly different than the one you looked at last week, or last month, I should say, for the Starbucks,
Yeah.
which in that zone, it was allowed to be slightly larger, but here it's 30 square feet total for the menu board. The location there is going to be back there, actually behind the building where the drive-through lane will be. It's item 4 there, or little, red dot 4 is where the menu board will be located. It meets all the town's requirements, but it is a ground sign, so it requires VRRB approval, and staff can recommend approval of it.
No subject to.
No,
Good.
it
I
meets the
like those.
requirements.
It says menu board, no speaker. Where's the speaker?
The ordering thing is actually there at 5 on this map. It's just, that's not
That's
signage.
the board itself to look at all the good stuff, and then you go to the other one, correct?
Well, the
Or it's
menu
right-
board will be in front of you,
Yes.
and then,
And then
the
the little-
canopy
little-
with the speaker that you order into
right
is
beside of it.
immediately next to it. So
Right.
you're
We
sitting
don't have a
there.
picture of that.
No,
It's just
no.
the little, well, actually, do we?
Now, sometimes they're fairly
Yeah.
significant.
Right here, oh, no, this is right there.
It's the menu board.
I just got where the location is on
Like
this
little-
map.
Little, it's not very large, or won't be very large.
Some of them actually have a canopy over them. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to put in here, but
So that doesn't have anything to do with us right now.
No,
It'll be
that,
back just later.
that won't have any advertising or branding on it. It'll just be a functional piece of hardware. Really what you're tasked with reviewing is the
the
menu
board.
board in this case.
Okay, it's good.
The menu board looks good.
Yep, I like it.
Any other discussion on the menu board? All right, do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so going down to the next item from Dunkin' Donuts, the directional signs. I guess directing you to the menu board, the drive-through.
To the drive-through. Again, this is similar to something that you looked at for another restaurant a month or so ago. The ordinance does allow for one parking lot directional to be located at each entranceway, each driveway, and onto a site. So they are requesting 2. They have 2 access cuts on this property. They have one up there on Campbell Lakes Drive and one on Station West. So one of these directionals will be at one entrance, one will be at the other, just pointing you in the right way to get around for the drive-through lane. The access to the drive-through lane will be down from down on the south side, on the Station West side, and you'll pull in that way and go to the menu board. So we do permit one of these signs per access point. There are dimensional requirements. These meet the dimensional requirements. There are some setback requirements. They have to be at least 15 feet from the edge of pavement of the road, and then 5 feet from the edge of pavement of drives and parking areas. That's one thing we do need to have verified. So any approval should be subject to their plan being updated to note those setback requirements, and then field verification of the signs by a surveyor when they're installed to make sure they meet the setback requirements. But the signs, they do meet our area requirements, which is 2 square feet and no more than 30 inches high. So
So other than verifying the actual location by surveyor,
survey, and just, we'd also like them to add a note to the permit application or to the drawing, just, also indicating what those setbacks are. But that's
right?
subject to those 2 things.
Well, to me, the signs are very legible and easy to read.
They'll also be getting a wall sign that we've been working with them on too, that, for the building, but, that's something we can permit internally as staff.
Okay.
Is all this located behind where the storage building's being built?
No.
No, it's that new building where they took the
Elliott's
old,
booth.
where
Elliott's
Elliott's was.
booth, yes.
And so that new building now is going to have 3 tenants across the face, all facing out on Campbell Station. The Dunkin' Donuts is going to be in the northernmost corner.
Okay.
And then, on the other 2
Elliott's
spaces,
is
Elliott's is going to
probably the center.
reoccupy a portion of that building as well, and then there'll be a 3rd tenant.
He's in the back now. He's going,
Yeah.
he's going to be in the
Yeah.
back, and then.
Yeah,
so
they
there's
took some
gonna be two-
temporary space in the rear building, but they're going to be moving back up to the
Dunkin' will
front.
be there.
Man, how do you
Well, this
come
is
in there?
Campbell Station Road,
Right.
and over here is where Cracker Barrel is. So you can either turn there and come in here,
We didn't do it. They
or you
did
can come in on this
that
other access road here, come in that way.
from a hotel or something
Okay,
else
and
across
this
the
is-
street, close to.
This will
So
be
you
the
would
front of the
come-
building up
this is
here,
just-
where you park and go in the front entrance.
Yeah.
And this will be the behind the building where the drive-through menu board will be, and then you'll come around here to the drive-through window and come around.
I see.
So,
That must.
all right, was there any other discussion on the drive-through signs for Dunkin' Donuts? You have a motion?
I motion, subject to the application plan being updated to include setback location requirements and actual location signs being verified by a surveyor.
All right, have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we'll move down to the next ground-mounted sign. The location formerly known as Clarity Point at 901 Concord Road has changed names to Avenir Memory Care. Apparently, the sign was already installed, so they're having to come back through now and
And they need to
go through
move
the
top.
process.
Yep. Unfortunately, it was done originally without a permit. The sign is in the location that the prior one was. It's the same sign. They essentially just refaced it, and updated the facing, but, they were supposed to get a permit for that. They did it without. So they're coming through now to rectify that and properly permit the sign. Really, the only issue with it is the number. You can see there is partially hidden behind the bush, and it's supposed to
Right.
be at the top of the sign, so
it
that'll
at
have
the
to be
top before?
relocated. Huh?
Yeah.
It was at the
Yeah,
top
it-
before.
it
What
was.
happened? Why did it?
This is just the way they had this new sign face made, and they just didn't,
Really?
again, because they didn't come through the permitting process on
Yeah.
the front end, that didn't get caught, so now they're going to have to rectify that problem.
I
But,
mean, other than that, it's a very readable sign.
Yep, I like it, except, so
Yeah.
they're going to take it and put it up at, do you have any idea? where the-
No,
on that squ-
we haven't gotten a revised drawing on it, but, they're aware they're going to have to deal with that issue, and, subject to them dealing with that issue. They could put a side number placard on the top of it, or they could just, I think on the old sign, from the pictures I've seen, the numbers were on the face, they were just
Right.
located up near the top, so.
They'll have to put it right through there, won't they?
But the structure was there, all the landscaping is already
you're right.
pre-existing.
It
I
was-
mean, you could tell how much that landscaping's already grown up, and, so.
So
So
they
can
could
we
put-
only approve pending? We can't
Well,
disapprove this sign.
it would have to be
Disapprove.
approved subject to them relocating the street address number to be compliant with the
And if they don't do
code.
that, what would happen?
Do you have the old one?
Get a permit until
Okay.
I wish you'd have-
until they revise it and show it to be compliant.
Would
Okay.
it be compliant if they moved it up on that right-hand side, or does it have to be
On top?
on the actual?
In talking to Mark about that and looking at the old sign, I think if they put it up high on the sign, because even at one of your past meetings, we talked about somebody integrating the number more into the sign, so wasn't just a placard stuck on top. So I don't know what'll be the best and most cost-effective way. It's certainly something that, if you like, we could, when we get the drawing in, we could email out to y'all, so, just so you could take a look at it.
Well, because I think on the previous sign, up in that rounded part is where the number was. if
Yeah,
I
and it
remember
may not be
correctly.
large enough for them to do.
And then the name was straight across, so it stood out, but I think because that whole right side is just plain, if they moved it up, to me, I think it would stand out enough. And I think that's the key of it being on the top, is that it
Yep.
stands out.
Yeah.
So to me, on that right-hand side, it would stand out enough. I just didn't know if there
Yeah.
was anything
have to go back and look at the old one.
I don't think it has to be in a placard on the top. I just think it has to be located at the top of the sign. You know, and with it being a white sign like that, it's a, you know, they're going to have great contrast if they move those numbers up. It'll be very visible from the street.
The only problem, I think, is that sign's kind of angled, and so
Little.
the wooded area is kind of to the side, so that side of the sign isn't as visible
As the
as
other.
that rounded top point. But
I like the design and the shape that they've done to it, and I would not want to take away from that by putting the numbers up there in a very ugly-looking box.
Right.
It would be nice to have it above where the
Above there.
Avenir
If they have room.
name is, if they could work that out somehow, but
I agree with Mark, with, what's your name?
whoever I am.
Brittany.
Marty.
Marty.
But I can just visualize the numbers up above where they are. I think it would look too small if you put it over the avenue.
That's what I'm worried about.
But I think if they'd use that big white space that's open on that right side, that would be fine.
And it could maybe balance it out for that, being on that side and then the name on this side right here. I mean,
Right.
on the straight, the square part.
And I cannot see a box sign above that.
Oh, nope.
Well, we can certainly pass that on to them to, you know, to look at doing it that way. That's,
I'm surprised that they didn't come to you guys, really, to be honest with you.
well, you know, I think they contacted somebody about, you know, doing it, and but I'm not sure they, you know, fully recognized that they had to get a permit for it,
Change
and
it.
so
That surprises me.
it did cost them an extra permit fee, because when you know, put one up without a permit, there's an additional charge when you come back and fix it as a penalty. So, but they're just trying to get right with the, you know, right with the system now. So, subject to them dealing with that number, it's compliant. It's in the same location, everything as the previous sign.
Okay. All right, is there any further discussion on this sign? Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve, subject to the address number being relocated to the top, either left or right,
Of the
for,
current sign.
of the sign required by the regulations.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Is somebody
All right.
else here?
So we'll be moving along now to the Starbucks tenant panel that's on the ground-mounted sign that we approved last month. So this will be just a panel upon that sign.
Are you with Starbucks? Oh.
Yeah. There's actually two tenant
This
panels
is pretty easy.
requests on the agenda tonight. So the first one is for the northernmost sign on that property, the one that will be fronting up on Kingston Pike. It's the larger of the two. I have a graphic there that is from your August meeting when you actually approved the monument signs. You know, at the time, those tenant panels were just for illustrative purposes, so now they're coming back and actually permitting the individual tenant panels that will go on it. So the first one is the larger of the two. There is a slight discrepancy that I let the sign manufacturers know about on the size and the dimensions on that tenant panel. You can see there it's dimensioned. It's 6 feet by 7.5 inches, whereas on the actual monument sign they were dimensioned slightly larger than that. It's 7.5 by 78 inches long. So they can actually increase that tenant panel a little bit.
I actually sent this to you later. We have exact dimensions of panels.
Okay.
So we can permit that based on those exact dimensions.
Okay, great. So, you know,
It's going to be larger.
perfect. Yeah.
Good.
So aside from that, I mean, it appears it appears to be legible. It certainly goes on the sign that, you've previously approved, in terms of, the size of the panels. With the revision, just to make it match, it's something we can definitely recommend in favor of.
The one question I have on this one, because this will be the first tenant panel that's being approved for this sign, is staying consistent in the future with other tenants that are put in here. With this being completely holly green for the entire sign and wanting to stay consistent, will that mean that all the other tenants in here have to go with a solid color, or the holly green, or a logo color, or will it just be a rainbow of colors? Or would we prefer them, like we have in other town areas, to
Costco.
go with black writing with a logo that is more color centric to what their logoed color is? Because I know we've done that in some of the other town center type
Let's go.
Yeah.
panels where we would have a more consistent look between all of the tenants and the panels for consistency's sake.
Yeah, that was something that occurred to me also, and in discussing that with Mark. Several of the shopping centers that do have that common look on the tenant panels, that's sort of at their choice and what the the owner of the center had required. In the sign regulations, we have a requirement for wall signs that there is some consistency in terms of coloring and that sort of thing. But we don't have that same language on the tenant panel side. So, if they choose to allow, some differences in there, I mean, you're still going to be looking at them if something was completely out of bounds. I'm sure you could make recommendations for, a change or something like that. But, and now if you want to suggest they do it, but, Starbucks has been pretty particular about its branding, and
Like a lot of
absent
others would be.
something from the landlord on or the owner on wanting some sort of consistency on the monument signs. It's really at their discretion on that. Yeah, it did occur to me, because I was like, so what do we need to do on this type of tenant paneling, and because the one that comes to mind is where the Dunkin' Donuts
Right.
is now, where everything in there is black lettering, and that's one that I had asked about, and but there's a lot of tenant, and same over at Village Green, they're very similar. But then there's a lot of other tenant panels around town where they all have their own style of logo and their own coloring. So.
And I think even though that the owner of those complexes hasn't set that now going forward, we've had to stick with that though, because we've made them consistent.
Yeah, if there's one you're trying to be consistent in, then I think we've tried to follow on that. But here we didn't make it a comment because it wasn't a specific requirement on our end. I know that there was some discussion in emails from y'all about just looking at the tenant panel issue in terms of size and particularly on some of the larger streets. We're going to start working on making some revisions to our sign regulations. Here it's on our work program, and we're actually going to have a meeting on it tomorrow afternoon. And so if you think we need to look at some more consistency on those, that's certainly something we could look at in terms of that as well.
It doesn't, I mean, I'm like Brittany. I mean, the only thing that bothers me is like she said, some we've required and some we haven't.
And
I like the consistency too.
Well, and even, I mean, I know the one right up here where Domino's is, we require, and it was not a center requirement, that they all had red or blue
It was-
because somebody wanted red and blue. And so the others going in,
Marco's.
there was a barber shop and there was
Oh.
Domino's and they both had red and blue. And so somebody else going in there and we said, well, if it's red, that's okay, but no other colors.
And we did the same thing like with Marco's and the nail salon, and we've been picky
But it wasn't
about the-
required within the center, but because we wanted to remain consistent,
And at that
because two of the others had colors,
Yeah.
we tried to keep them consistent. So I'm just concerned that because this is so much green and it's the first one, that if somebody comes in with bright yellow
Or purple.
or purple, how much are we going to, I mean, if they want their whole sign, are we going to allow every single one to be a different solid color and not be able to say, you know,
And then
I
you
mean,
get
I mean,
into
the towns, in the architectural design standards, separate and apart from the sign regulations, you know, there is language about using colors for the sign that are compatible with those on the building facade, you know, and that, don't clash with the building facade and but it's more relations to the, so if someone came with, something that was just completely out of character with the building and the entire development on the architectural design standards, you could probably weigh in on that and ask them to make some changes. Again, we didn't flag it because it's not in the sign regulations that there has to be absolute consistency in terms of the color on a tenant panel.
And speaking for myself, I think a little variety is good. I mean, I think if we try to make everything look the same,
I agree.
it's going to
Yeah.
get boring in this town, terribly boring.
I agree with you. And I think
Well,
this one is,
It's
I like
very
the
well
Starbucks
done.
color.
Yeah.
We're not,
And
it's
this
very-
sign specifically.
Worried about the follow-on.
But it's just
It's the
right.
following, just because this one is all green, and I have seen Starbucks signs that do have black in them, and the initial one was black, so it kind of just caught my eye, and I know that this was just for, to have a sign in there. And so I think it was just thinking future, because this did have all black type in it.
Yeah.
So did they want the black to be consistent or not?
I mean,
But yes,
the black
agree
might,
with you, David,
the
that
black
it does
might
add.
have more contrast. It might be better, but, there's someone here from Hilton Design that.
It also bothers me,
that-
though, is because, like the logo, like David said, I have issues if all over, like JCPenney or whatever, whoever it is, if we tell them, I mean, that's what Coca-Cola or whatever it is, and you're saying, I'm sorry, but you can't use, that kind of bothers me a little bit. So, Starbucks, everybody knows Starbucks, so we need to have some that's what she's talking about, because it's not fair for us to it kind of started with Turkey Creek because there were a certain way they wanted things, and then so it kind of led
Yeah.
us to have to do with others that do red and the yellow and a specific kind. But I'm like, I like a little bit of consistency, but I don't want it to be so like,
Bland.
I don't want it bland, and I don't want it to be like purple or green and polka dot or
Well,
something like
but
that.
if you had a company with
Logo-
logo purple, it'd be
They'd
purple.
want it.
Well, if you look at the Pacific sign, which is below the Starbucks, it kind of
Yeah,
gets
we need
lost
to
in the
just
thing because
do
it
what
looks
the
like they could
logos.
emphasize the name a little bit more for one thing.
But
There
if
is
they
a
don't
little
have a
blue in
logo,
that
what
sign.
happens?
But it
Again,
looks good.
yeah, again, on that was just thrown up on there for an illustration on,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what the next tenant panel is going to look
Okay.
like.
But I mean, it's dwarfed by the Starbucks. It needs to, it's
yeah.
too much white space.
And it's not particularly legible, and that's something that y'all do have control over. So,
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't permit that sign as it appears on this SketchUp.
Right.
I guess what we're trying to say, or I may be putting words, a logo is great, like if it's purple, like you said, or it's a logo. But what happens if a person comes in it's new, that doesn't have a logo, and they're like, hey, I want this polka dot, this. Where do we draw the line? Yeah, you want to say something? Oh, where do we draw the line?
That's something that maybe we need to address in the rewrite of the sign
Yes,
regulations. I
because
know
when
from a staff perspective, we've been encountering a lot of issues with large chains that have very specific logos and
Right.
trademark colors and whatnot, and we're trying to strike a balance
Right.
with that, and And, we're working with another development now in terms of, because we do have the language on the wall signs for consistency, how we're going to deal with that. And fortunately, the landlord's involved and the three tenants are involved, and we're coming up with a balance, I think, that'll look good and consistent across the building. And so but it has been an issue.
Well, this is an important one, though, because this is major visual.
Intersection, yeah.
Major, yeah.
It's big.
I want to discriminate against the logos, but we also have to be, it's a big thing.
You know,
that
I
we need to
think
straighten out.
what you
Yeah.
just said about working with the landlord, working with the tenants, if everyone has an agreement on that, then I think that's totally fine. And I do think in the town center, the town has worked very hard to come up with special regulations there. And if there is something that needs to be changed in the regulation regarding this for the town center, that's fine. But that's not in front of us today. We don't have that regulation today. We don't have the tenants and the landlords here today who are all in agreement to do a certain uniform look. So based on that, what's in front of us today is a tenant panel for Starbucks that's legible, meets all the criteria. And, I mean, I can't see a reason not to proceed with that.
Right.
And then the next one that comes along, we just need to make sure it's legible and meets the criteria.
That's why you're boss.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
That's why you're the chair.
That's right.
I make a motion, we approve this sign as it is.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion before we move forward?
With the understanding that they're going to, revise the size slightly.
Oh, yeah, he's
from
already
what's-
said, yeah,
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
okay.
So we've got a motion with the understanding the size will be revised. Any further discussion on it? All right, do we have a second on that?
I second.
Oh,
We have a motion and a second.
We have two
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, so this is for the tenant panel on the larger sign. So now we need to move to the tenant panel on the smaller sign, which it's the same. So on that one, do we have a motion?
motion to approve, and there's no there's no subjects on this
No,
one.
no,
Nothing.
that one met
was
the,
fine.
met the dimensions that was on
Motion to
on the
approve.
original ground sign.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Who made the motion?
Brittany did. Second.
Brittany can second it.
I did. Oh, I made the motion. Brittany.
Brittany second.
Okay, so moving down to the next item on the agenda, which is the Starbucks pre-menu board that has been requested on the same property, but is not currently permitted under the town regulation.
Yeah, the next four items on the agenda all are very similar. In working with the sign companies for this, we went ahead and worked on permitting the signs we could permit over the past couple months. We've permitted 3 wall signs, the menu board that y'all reviewed last month, and the 2 directionals. So those have all been in the works, and now the 2 tenant panels from tonight. But Starbucks wanted 4 additional signs that are not supported by our current regulations. Because they were all ground signs, it was a situation where staff couldn't just deny them outright without bringing them to the Visual Resources Review Board. They have applied for variances, and they will be on the Board of Zoning Appeals agenda tomorrow night. But again, before they can move forward with variances, they had to go through the process of being reviewed and potentially denied if you all choose to deny that, these applications. So the first one that was just introduced is a pre-menu board for the Starbucks and the Farragut Gateway. It'll be located at Station H there on the map. So it'll be up there. Obviously, it's a pre-menu board, so it's near the main menu board and on the drive-through lane. The the town's regulations and the sign regulations only allow one menu board per drive-through lane, and with this development falling in the mixed-use town center planning area, it's also restricted to one drive-through lane and one menu board. The menu board is restricted to 36 square feet that is permitted, and they used the full 36 square feet on the one that you permitted at a prior meeting. So both the town's sign regulations and the zoning ordinance don't provide for an additional menu board at this location. So staff recommends denial.
The thing that concerns me is it's such a small area it's going to be, and more signs, it makes it even more, it's smaller.
Yeah, and the menu board is there, and it has all the items that you
So
can
you don't
order.
really need a
To me, the pre-menu board is just for a picture or something. I don't. But the main thing is it's not permitted under
Right.
regulation.
Nope.
So I think we were consistent in previous meetings here recently where we had things in front of us that were not permitted under regulation, and we are not here to set the regulations. So.
Do most
Great.
of them have that? Like a pre-board?
So based upon that, is there any further discussion on the pre-menu board? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the pre-menu board based on it not being permitted.
We have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The next item is the thank you and exit sign. It looks like that one, if you will explain that just a little bit, looks like that one could have been approved if it had been altered a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, our regulations are fairly specific about, the allowable number and types of signs that are allowed on any given site. In this case, the regulations don't permit, the requested sign or the sign as requested. We do allow for some limited advisory signs for safety purposes and that sort of thing, like exit only and whatnot. But they're restricted to the advisory message only. They're not there for additional messaging or branding or advertising. They also have to be located in consultation with our engineering department and the manual of uniform traffic control devices in terms of height and location. So if there is concern by Starbucks about, a problem with somebody maybe driving in the exit of the drive-through, the ordinance does make some provisions for that sort of advisory sign. It just has to be done in a slightly different way, and its location and height will have to be reviewed under the traffic control device manual. So that was conveyed to the sign company. After we got this application, and Starbucks still chose to move forward with the application the way they had it, and so that's why it's on the agenda tonight. And it'll be on the agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals tomorrow night.
All right, so then same comment, as presented, it is not permissible under the regulations, and so we cannot change that. So any further discussion on this one?
Yeah, are we just talking about the thank you sign, exit sign?
Yep.
Not the
Yeah.
directional?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Right now, yeah.
okay.
All right, so again, not permitted under the regulations. Do we have a motion on this thank you and exit sign?
You want to take that one?
Okay, I'll make a motion to deny as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so the next item is another Starbucks sign that's a directional sign. I guess it's the one that says drive-through on it. Same.
Yeah, there's two different ones of these at two different locations. We didn't bundle them like we did the ones at the entrances that were previously approved, just because they're two different signs at two different locations. Ultimately, if they are granted variances, they'll need two separate variances by the Board of Zoning Appeals if they were to be located. they're going to go at locations, well, the two Cs on the map. One at the entrance, I guess, to the drive-through, and then one just on one of the islands in the parking lot. So there's really two separate applications, and we'll need two separate motions on them. But again, they're not, they're not provided for in the ordinance. They're, the regulations are fairly specific that we allow parking lot directionals only at the entrances and exits to parking lots. This board has previously interpreted that to allow for, the drive-through directional, and that's what has been permitted back in September by y'all. So the permissible signs have already been permitted, and these are extra signs that aren't provided for in the ordinance. So again, staff would recommend denial of the request.
All right, so on the first directional sign, which is item H in our packet,
Is it H?
do we have any further discussion on it? Okay, do we have a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to deny.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the second one, which is really the same thing, but at a different location, is item I in our packet, which is a directional sign as well for the drive-through. Do we have a motion on that one?
I make a motion to deny the additional drive-through.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. So that's everything that's on the primary agenda. Are there any new business items or information that we need to discuss, Mark?
I've got two things that I need to get some input on real quick. I know we've had a long agenda. The first is that your board, has an adopted stream segment. The cleanup for that stream segment is scheduled for November 3rd, and I'm Lori Sal over in Stormwater and the AmeriCorps member. We're trying to get a head count on how many of you thought you were going to participate in the stream cleanup, but I guess it's a week from this Saturday.
Right?
Yeah.
What time were we planning to meet?
Not 100% sure of that. Hang on to see.
I
see
put
if it's in the-
9.
I think 9 o'clock.
I put 9 in my calendar.
Yeah,
That's what-
okay,
9
I've
o'clock's
got
what
an
I-
email here. It was, 9 a.m. at the park and ride lot, and they say it'll take 2 to 3 hours.
Right.
Are you going to show up, or Mark?
I think Mark's definitely going to be
Okay.
there.
You're going to be there?
Because,
Yeah,
Mark
this
has
is,
expressed that he will be there, and I also volunteered as well.
okay. Yeah,
this
you
is
were there
Connor, by
last
the
time
way.
we
He's,
did it, weren't you?
he's a new
No?
planner with our staff. Yeah,
You're new?
yeah, he's new.
So the other person was, okay. It sort of looked like you.
And this parking lot is behind where?
Behind the liquor store,
Behind the liquor store.
the Campbell Station.
Parties and the liquor store.
We can get you all the information. I think they were just trying to get a head count for,
Basically, they just need us a head count, so we can just show up and they have all the stuff. You just have to
Yeah.
bring your,
exactly.
Well,
They'll-
I'm planning to be there.
I will be there.
I will be there.
My schedule's filled up. I will not be there.
I will be out of town.
Okay, so we got Marty for sure, Jean for sure, Brittany for sure.
I'm going to try to be there. I will let you know for sure, though.
Okay.
You can
And
add
Brit-
me in for now, and I will let you know. if it
Okay,
changes.
so Marty, Jean, Brittany with a
Oh,
question mark.
And
Alex?
mine, I
I'm gonna
will be
try.
there unless
Cindy?
that, oh yeah, I'll be there, but unless that, something happens with my mom.
Right.
Always add that.
I'll try and be there. I may have a college tour
Okay.
that day.
Yeah, I think that would take
And-
precedence.
I think we-
Bring anybody you want to, you
I
know.
think we can add to that. If you can't be there the whole time, that's fine.
That's right. You don't have to be
that's
there the
good.
whole time either.
That's good.
And you can bring your family members or friends,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
anybody that
love
wants
it.
to help clean up or take your place.
How long does it usually run?
It takes about a couple hours.
3 hours is
Actually-
what they're
It can,
estimating.
Actually, there were just 2 of us there the last time, and we were there 3 hours. So if there's more than that, it won't take any time. We'll look.
Right, won't take any time.
1 or 2
And
hours at the
most of the
most.
materials that we need for the cleanup will be provided.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to bring your own gloves, definitely wear some good boots and
take the
Yeah,
little
whatever clothing.
rain
I'm
booters.
taking the high green. I've already
Yeah,
talked
you'll
to
take
Steve.
the, oh,
All
that'll
right.
be easy for you, because
Yeah,
the parking,
so I won't have
I
to
will
worry
too, because
about-
I don't want to get in the creek anymore.
I
I
don't
got
get
down in
burned
that
up
creek the
anymore.
last time.
I can't get better.
This,
I'm scared of snakes.
next thing that I just wanted to touch base with you all on is Mark's been dealing with an applicant for a wall sign, which I know you typically don't see wall signs, but it's something we wanted to get some input on. It's over here at the Kohl's Shopping Center.
Is?
And, well, it's proposed to be. It's in the western corner of that shopping center.
What was there before, do you know?
I don't off the top of my head. It's a business called Burn Boot Camp, and they had originally proposed a blue facelit sign. Well, under our regulations, because wall signs, there is a statement about some sort of consistency in color across the shopping center. Apparently, the owner of the center originally had wanted red signs on that strip, and you can see that most of the other signs there are red, with the exception of Kohl's, which is white. So the blue was problematic, and we couldn't permit it based on our regulations. So now they're proposing white to see whether or not there's some consistency there because of the Kohl's white.
Oh, it does show up good.
So Mark asked me to bring this to you tonight and at least try to get your opinion on how you feel that is.
It's a little,
So I have a question to you about this. So it's been a while, a long while, and H&R Block came to us. It's been a long while.
time.
And we had approved a sign change for them because they wanted it to be more like their logo so that they stood out from the red signs. And they were going to change their sign out. And we approved for them to change their sign from the red to something else. And I don't know if it was the green because we said it would match their logo. And we had said that the suntan place had yellow in their logo. And so if the suntan place was allowed to use their logo, then for consistency's sake, we should allow H&R Block to use their colors and their logo. And because Kohl's had a different color and the owner of the center wasn't in there anymore, then to be consistent with what we were allowing, then we had to allow H&R Block to use theirs. And I remember driving through there months and months afterwards thinking, why didn't H&R Block ever change their sign out? And I don't know if that's something you can go back and look at, but to me,
I can remind Mark of that. He may have forgotten
remember
that meeting and that
conversation
conversation.
with them. I do think that the blue would
remember.
stand out, and
I
I
do
probably
too.
have my notes at home. Call me weird. But I do think that the white looks okay with the Kohl's. I do think that the blue
red,
would,
white, and blue look cool.
I mean, but I think that was when we were having a conversation about if that's their logo and that's their color, and if blue is their color.
Yeah.
And if we approved it for H&R Block, then I think I would say then
What color
it was
blue was
probably
it?
approved for Kohl's because of that
It
as
was
well.
it was a pretty blue. It was
It
pretty.
was a blue, like a.
Yeah, it was blue.
It was like a
It-
really bright blue.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly would have been very different than any of the other signs on
So
the
it would
building.
have been really harder to read than the white.
Yeah, and in this case, it was more than just a logo, like at the suntan place. It's the entire sign face is
Right.
Okay.
is a different color than the red sign letters that are on all the other storefronts that are on the side of that shopping center. But it sort of balances with the white Kohl's letter, and
Yeah.
and so
It does.
that's what they proposed as a possibility in terms
I
of
don't have a
trying to
problem with
maintain
it.
some consistency there to go from blue to white. Again, from a staff perspective, we wanted to try to get some input from y'all on what y'all thought about that.
It's fine.
But it's very legible, and I think it looks good.
I
and
think the
it
white would
blends,
stand out
yeah.
much better than the blue
Yeah.
if it's really
I think the white stands out more than the red,
I do
personally.
too. I do too.
Yeah,
Look at
it
that.
really does.
The
I
two,
think the white
I
looks
can't even
better.
see these other ones.
I'm
It's
not
just
sure
like a
why
fat-
any tenant would
Gonna be
require
a
red.
Red.
It's a
I
workout.
know.
Yeah, it's a workout thing.
That's the most ridiculous thing
I
I've
like
ever
the
heard of.
white
too.
looks better.
They're not very legible.
Well, it's
I don't know why they
I
would
think the
want it.
consensus is white's fine with us.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
looks pretty good.
Wasn't us, that was
Yeah.
the,
The tenant.
Yep, I think so.
anyway.
Looks
In my
good to
opinion,
me.
it looks good.
Yeah, I like
do
the
too.
white.
So, sort of a general consensus is you think it's,
We like
it's,
it.
I think it's fine.
That's
Yeah, I
what
think so.
want to do.
The purple building?
Well, across the street from that, is it, no, not O'Reilly's, the auto place.
Yeah, it's around.
That,
Across from Big O Tires.
yeah,
that
yeah.
closed down.
then,
Includes our fund.
Everything?
It's down already.
All right, with that,
Oh, yeah,
we
yeah.
will adjourn.
But
Thank you all
their
very
sign
much.
is like the